We've made 1,282 samples and beats, and this is what we've learned. We started making samples and beats under the name International 812 days ago, which averages out to be about 1.57 samples and beats a day, which is pretty consistent. And in that time, we've landed a handful of placements with over 1 million streams, made over $20,000 with beat and collab sales, had Lil Tecca, Gonzi, and Nims rapping our samples and beats, having found literally the route we want to go down with our careers, and realizing that you can actually do music for a living. We did all this from our home studio in our parents' home, just creating every day, which honestly is the dream job. And in these 812 days of creation, we've learned 9 crucial lessons of creation and getting your samples heard. Why samples and beats? Because we practically always add a beat onto a sample that we've made, and then other times we'll start with the beat and then build a sample off that. Anyway, another video that we wish we would have had 2 years ago when we were starting this out, not knowing what to focus on. Getting straight into it, the first lesson is creating every day. This is something we see as a non-negotiable for music producers, as it ensures that you are always improving and practicing your skills, and is going to give you the highest chance to make the most amount of music, which then gives you more music to send out to people on a daily basis. Deciding to create every day gives you something to do. It keeps you busy. It means there can never really be a moment where you're wondering, what should I do now? We all know making another beat or sample or something is clearly going to help you as a music producer and push you towards reaching those goals we all want. There's 7 days in the week. It doesn't mean that those 7 days you're going to make great music, you're going to be even inspired those 7 days. But if you create all of those 7 days, it's going to give you the highest chances to make music when you are inspired and when you do make something cool. Because we all know we're not always going to make something great. If you're cooking up 3-4 times a week, you're lowering your chances of getting into those flows, making that great music. A daily practice is essential for producers. And with the daily creation, you don't have to limit yourself to certain genres. Make different music, different genres. Start the process of making something differently each time. Get creative, experiment, but every single day have some sort of project that you've put your all into for at least 20 minutes in the day to work out that muscle of just creating every day, practicing your skills, improving. And of course, if you have a full day that you can dedicate to music, make 3, 4, 5, 6, as many beats as you can. There's no downside to working on your craft. Now, it's important to have periods where you aren't doing anything creative to kind of re-energize your creativity. But the thing is, these things just happen naturally throughout our lives, right? There might be a couple days where we generally can't make music for whatever reason, or we get really sick or something happens. The best bet is just create every day, and naturally things will get in the way and force you to have a creative break, which is fine. We all get it. That's how we approach creation, and we recommend it to you. That is lesson 1.
The second lesson we've learned is that the first few hundred beats and samples that you make really just aren't going to be that good. When we look back to the samples we're making for basically the whole of 2023, even the start of 2024, it's almost just a little bit cringe hearing what we made. But in saying that, over that first year to a year and a half of making music, occasionally there was a sample that just still stands out to this day. Somehow we just got something right. And that just came as a result of all the music we just kept on making. The more music you make, the better you're going to get, the more you're going to shape your sound. The biggest periods of improvement for our music were the times where we just really started experimenting with different sounds, new VSTs, different ways of processing our music, and also just making different genres as well. If you get stuck in these periods of time where you're just making the same sample, the same type of beat over and over, it's going to be very hard for you to progress and actually improve your sound. And this is completely normal. Everybody's been there. We've been there. You really need to start just experimenting with your sound, making new genres, and just combining all this random inspiration into your everyday music. Now, just time alone will not improve your music or build your sound. You need to combine lots and lots of creating music, and that combined with time will shape your sound and improve your skills at making music. Moving on to lesson number 3, which is that arrangement is super important. Now, this is something that we're constantly trying to figure out and get right in both our beats that we're sending out to artists putting on YouTube, as well as our samples that we're sending out to some really good producers. It is really just the first few seconds that just catches the ear of either the producer or the artist, whoever is listening. If you've ever seen like a video or a stream of a producer going through samples to be using, they're just clicking, barely listening to 2 or 3 seconds of it, just until they can get that first initial sound of something that they want. Every single day, I'm sending the samples over to Marcos just to get his feedback, thoughts on areas of improvement before we send them out to producers. And now sometimes we've realized, especially if you're the one making the sample, as the person that's made the sample, you hear the sample completely different to somebody who's listening to it for the first time. As you know exactly what's going to be happening in the next 8 bars, you know how the sample's going to be progressing, what the chord change is going to be. So to you, everything makes complete sense. Because Marcos hasn't heard the sample before, sometimes when he hears the samples, he'll pick up on things things that only somebody on a first listen could notice because he's got no idea where the sample is going. If you were to be sending out your beats, your samples to artists, putting them on Type Beat channel, sending your samples out, and you haven't double checked with maybe a producer friend or even just listening with a fresh pair of ears, you're never actually going to be able to know what it's going to sound like for a first listen. If that first listen doesn't catch them, it's not going to work out well. Your beat or your sample is always evolving. There's always new sounds coming in, all being taken out, and it always just feels like the sample's changing while still staying in the same vibe of the sample or beat, whatever it may be. Particularly important if you're posting type beats on YouTube, because of how important it is to have high retention on your type beats. You always want to be having new sample layers coming in, new drum sounds, to keep the listener staying for as long as possible. Because if you've just got the same 8-bar loop going over and over again, people are going to get bored, they're going to click off. Arrangement is far more important and requires a lot more thought than you think. Put more effort into how you arrange your beats and samples.
Lesson number 4, be efficient in your creation where it makes sense. There are things you can do to save time while you're creating and also almost reuse previous sounds and ideas that you had in the past to make your samples quicker and better. First thing we do, we've been doing this for the past couple of months, saving vocal presets, guitar presets. We do it on FL, we save presets into different folders, and then if you record a vocal, if you record a guitar layer, you have a piano layer, we have these different sounds that we title maybe vintage, dark, effect, and then you drag that on, it makes it vintagey, it makes it dark. This kind of thing not only saves some time while you're creating, if you have made something really crazy, you've spent 5-10 minutes on effects and it sounds really good, you can save that whole idea of effects and then use it in another project. It has definitely improved our production, so easy to do. To be honest, we might even release a product in the future with effect presets because they're so useful in creation. Definitely try it for yourself. The next thing you can do, this is a really good idea for producers, build a drum kit with your current unique sounds that you're using a lot, your go-to sounds, so that you're saving time by not having to scroll through all your sounds to find the ones that you're using at the moment, but also the fact that you can start to have a more coherent sound because you keep reusing the same sort of sounds in your beats, which is great for listeners. They start to recognize that your beats have like a similar sound. If you're building one of these though, we would recommend building it with sounds that you have maybe adapted or really rare sounds that you've found, because if you're just making a kit and putting all the Pyrex sounds or something into it, your beats are going to sound the same as other beats on YouTube. Ever since we started selling our own drum kits and our own multi-kits, we realized, wow, this speeds up the process. We use our own drum kits every day. So good having really high quality, unique sounds in one spot. Try it for yourself. Be efficient with your production. That is lesson number 4. Lesson number 5. Nobody is going to hear your music when it's sitting on your hard drive. Get into the habit of putting your music onto the internet on a daily basis. Now, before you go and upload your music and send it to everyone's emails you can get a hold of, we wouldn't recommend this to someone who's just starting out. If you've only been making beats and samples for 2 to 3 months, to be honest, your music's probably not that good. We just know from experience that when you're sending out crap music to people, it can easily stuff up your connections in the future. We used to do this. We used to send terrible samples to people. They'd put our email in spam, or they'd just make a mental note that this name has terrible loops. So then now, when we have great music, it's harder to get in with those people because we've already burnt those connections by sending crap music. So that's the small preface into this lesson. Let's carry on. The mindset we like to have is people need our music for their songs, for their beats. It's almost like our duty to put our music, because we know it's good, out into the world for people to use. That's the mindset we have. So every day you can do one of these things. First thing, send samples or beats out. We send samples every day, even if it's just to a few people on iMessage. Every day send something out. Post a story previewing music. If you're posting sick stuff on your story, maybe it's a video of your setup, maybe it's a screen recording of a sample or something. If you post your best samples and beats, it's cool. It's a cool way to engage your audience. Sometimes that can even lead to people replying to the story being like, yo, send me this stuff. Something we do. If you follow our Instagram, you'll know we do it. We don't overdo it, but we do it just enough. Try that out. Next thing, posting a type beat. Another great way to get your music out there. Let YouTube do its thing with the algorithm. Posting type beats is great. Free sample pack. You're not going to be doing this every day, obviously, but every couple of weeks or every month, put your samples in a free pack, put it on YouTube. This is honestly one of the ways we've got a lot of our placements with over 1 million streams from free sample packs. There's really no limit to where they can go. People can stumble across them, download them. They can end up in a crazy studio. You really never know. You could post Instagram Reels previewing music as well. Try find a unique style of content that you can do in Reels. Don't copy anyone else. Try find something fresh to preview your samples and beats. With those 5 things, they're great places to be putting your music out there, because again, no one's going to hear it if it's sitting on your hard drive.
Lesson number 6 is make music both for yourself and for others. This is all about balancing the music you make. If you're only making music that can be easily recreatable or just some crazy out the gate creative music, the chances that your music is going to be getting used is a lot lower than if you're doing both at the same time, sitting both of them out and doing that over a long period of time. The way that we think about it is we almost split it up into online BeatStars sales and industry connects industry producers. Whenever we're making something super creative, something unique, something that would just be crazy on like some top artist album, we're always trying to send that kind of music out to our industry connects. Those guys always seem to love that kind of stuff. But in our experience with people that run type beats, in general, those guys tend to stick with more generic and mainstream kinds of samples and stuff. But occasionally we'll still throw in some creative sample, which some type beat producers do really value. And again, this is just from our experience and how we split up in our heads. You still want to be putting the same amount of time and energy, but just in the back of your head while you're creating something, knowing that, okay, I want this to have more of a specific sound, less of my kind of touch, just so people are more likely to be using it to sell beats or whatever. Or that's how we view it anyway. And even with the split of having more creative music and more mainstream generic music, we would recommend that you're leaning more towards the side of getting creative. This is going to improve your sound faster, and I feel like when you're more creative, you just make better music anyway. We think this mindset's completely fine to have, and you just got to find whatever works for you. Lesson number 7, very actionable and something that we'd love to tell ourselves 2 years ago when we were first starting making music. To avoid using things like arcade, splice, perk loops, and basses. Now some of you may be a bit offended that we've said this. We probably would be as well if somebody told this to us 2 years ago. Because if you took all those things away from us 2 years ago, there wouldn't be much in our samples we had. Not to say that we're against splice, arcade, and perk loops and basses in general. It's just that a lot of the time, especially when we're first trying to figure out how to make music, these things were holding us back from getting creative and expanding on samples, because as soon as we got stuck with something, we didn't know what to add, we'd go straight into arcade, play G on the MIDI keyboard, and it'd come up with like some and it would come up with like some whole guitar melody or some vocal pattern. When you're trying to get good at making music and you've just got a cop out to push down a MIDI keyboard note, it's not improving your sound at all. Now in the moment, it might seem like it's a good short-term fix. It might make your sample sound a bit better, or your beat, or whatever you're doing. But if you really think about it, if that's all you're focusing on and that's all you're actually able to do, what happens when you go into a studio and pull up arcade and the other producer and artist you're there with has already heard every single sound there and other beats and samples that have been sent? Or if you just throw a perk loop and some respace onto something. It's just, these are things that anybody can do. You don't actually need any sort of real talent. Things like accents, phrases, and vocals, I'd say come under a different category compared to something like arcade. You can really actually get creative with how you process them, but really just throw yourself in the deep end. Learn how to put chords together, learn what sounds go together, and restrict your use of these easy cop-outs that will just make your music sound better at the time.
Lesson numero 8. What's your unique value? Seeing other producers do really well over the past couple of years, we realized that there's always some aspect of the producer or their sound that is unique to them, that is their thing, you could say, that help them reach those levels. So what is it for you? Maybe it's your signature vocals, your unique guitar sound, your vintage soul sound that you have, or maybe it's some unique piano VST that you found somewhere that no one else can get a hold of, and that's your sound. It might be your drum sounds, your beat intros, or maybe it's even the fact that you have some other skills or people can't even get a hold of your samples, so there's value in that. The fact that people can't get your samples, it makes your samples more valuable. Now, finding your unique value in your music may have already happened, but you may not be aware of it, and you may not have doubled down on it either. For us, we've realized we have certain things that are more valuable to our sound. For example, our guitars in our Afro samples and even in our NEM samples, our vocals, the fact that we hire vocalists to work with us adds a whole new flavor to our music. And even we have certain plugins that people starting to recognize in our sound. And there's certain way that we process sounds, especially the fact that we save presets and reuse them. It has really become a part of our value proposition. If you don't have anything uniquely valuable to you, the only thing you can do is experiment and just work harder until you find that thing. Use different instruments, learn things, use your voice, find unheard of plugins that are rare, that have sounds that could be your thing. Find drum sounds that no one's really even heard of and incorporate them into your music. This is going to be a path of experimentation to find that unique thing, but you're going to start to realize it in people who break through with their beats or samples. They have something to them that is uniquely valuable to them. You may find it naturally, you may need to think about it quite a bit. That is lesson number 8. Finally, lesson number 9, eventually aim to have people want your sound. The best scenario is that people eventually hear your beat or sample somewhere. They hear it in a song. Someone else is playing on their computer and they hear it. And they know, dude, that's International's samples, right? When you hear a Nico Baron sample, kind of know it's a Nico Baron sample when you hear it. You know when you hear a Kato Got Wings beat that it is a Kato beat. That is extremely valuable for the producer. And getting to this stage builds your whole personal brand. And once you get to this stage, you pretty much can get to the point where you make whatever you want, really, with your flavor of sound that people already like. You make whatever you want and people will appreciate it and want your sound just for you doing you. That is the coolest thing being a producer, and that's kind of like the final tier of the whole thing. So those are the 9 important lessons that we learned making 1,282 samples and beats over the past 812 days. If you're interested in watching us make a full sample from start to finish with no expectations, there's this video of us making a full vintage sample from scratch. And if you want to know how we go about making our own sound that just attracts placements to you, check out this video. We made a whole video on making your own sound. Another banger. Cheers for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.